on February 28th, he made a fatal mistake. We, the United States, are going to lose this war. This was a catastrophic decision.
This is the best video you ever see when it comes to someone analyzing international relations and the state of global politics as it is right now. John Mearsheimer went on Glenn Dayson's show and he drops a masterclass on what you need to know about what the status of the world is right now and the different players involved in it. Watch this with me, guys, and I promise you, you will not regret it. And before we get into it, please subscribe to the channel.
I think there's no question that fundamental changes are taking place in the sort of basic structure of the international system. And I think it's due to two sets of forces. One is just changes in the structure of the system over time. And I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. But then the second factor is Donald Trump, who is sui generis. I mean, we've never seen an American president like him. And he is in many ways a one-man wrecking ball. So when you take the structural changes that were inevitable and you marry that to what Trump is doing, you see that the world that we knew when we were younger is rapidly going away. So let me just first start by talking about the structural changes that are taking place. During the Cold War, we lived in a bipolar world, and you had the United States on one side and the Soviet Union on the other side. And the United States and the Soviet Union did very little economic intercourse. They were mortal rivals for almost all the Cold War. And what the United States was able to do was set up an order on its side of the Iron Curtain, as we used to say. So we created institutions like NATO, the European Community, and all sorts of other international institutions that were designed to facilitate the West's waging of the Cold War. And that was a world that I grew up in. But it went away in 1989 when the Cold War ended, and then in 1991 when the Soviet Union came apart. And we moved into the unipolar moment. And what you want to remember about the unipolar moment is what we really did, and I'm talking about the United States, in cahoots with the Europeans and our East Asian allies, including the Japanese and the South Koreans, is that we took that Western order that had been created during the Cold War to wage the security competition with the Soviet Union. We took that Western order and we expanded it all over the globe. It became an international order, not just a Western order. And what that meant was that you got things like NATO expansion into Eastern Europe, you got EU expansion into Eastern Europe, you got globalization. All of these moves that were basically directed by the United States during the unipolar moment were, again, designed to take that Western order and expand it across the entire globe. So although the scope of the order changed, in many ways the order remained intact. NATO remained intact, the European community became the European Union, globalization, which of course had started during the Cold War, grew by leaps and bounds, especially in 2001, when we allowed China to come into the World Trade Organization, and so forth and so on. So this is the world that exists up until about 2017. But what happens in 2017 is that we move into a multipolar world. And we have now three great powers in the system. And you want to remember, Glenn, we have not seen anything like this since 1945. In fact, I was born in late 1947. I was born into a bipolar world.
Honestly, Professor Mearsheimer, I wish he was my international relations professor. This man is so calm. It's like your granddad explaining to you how things work. He does it so simply and so subtly. Like you don't. It's like a nighttime story, like a fire camp story. That's how good it is. I just love listening to him and just learning. Like I've learned so much from this man than I've ever learned from any other person when it comes to international relations. I've read his books, and even in his book, you can just see how intelligent this man is. Like this video that we're watching right here is a masterclass. This is a masterclass, and if you gotta just watch it. This is one of the best videos you ever see when it comes to international relations. He explains down to the T how the world is currently working right now. You don't want to miss a bit.
And I had never seen a multipolar world. But here we are from 2017 up to the present in a multipolar world. And not only are we in a multipolar world, but very importantly, for the first time in American history, East Asia becomes the most important area of the world for the United States outside of the Western Hemisphere. For virtually all of our history between 1783, when we get our independence, and up until about 2017, Europe is the most important area of the world. It's because that's where the most formidable great powers are located. In other words, Nazi Germany is a much greater threat than Imperial Japan is to the United States. So the United States naturally has a Europe first policy during World War II. And then during the Cold War, the heart and soul of the Soviet Union is located in Europe, not in East Asia. So again, Europe is the most important area of the world. But with the rise of China in this new multipolar world, the United States, for the first time in its history, prioritizes East Asia over Europe and, of course, over the Persian Gulf. So you have at a structural level fundamental change taking place. And of course, if you're going to pivot to East Asia to contain China, which the United States does, it first starts talking about that in 2011 when Hillary Clinton enunciates that we're going to pivot to East Asia. But really, it begins when Trump moves into the White House in 2017. If you're going to pivot to East Asia, you're going to pivot away from someplace else. And that place is naturally going to be Europe. Europe is going to be number 2 or number 3 on the list of American strategic priorities outside of the Western Hemisphere once you're in a multipolar world where China is the real peer competitor. So you see these structural forces at play that I just described that are going to cause that Western order that we saw during the bipolar era of the Cold War, and then we saw expanded in the unipolar moment to basically come apart. There's just going to be fundamental changes that take place because the structure of the system has changed. And the US-China competition, which did not matter very much during bipolarity or unipolarity, is now front and center. So a lot of what's going on today, I believe, is accounted for by these structural changes that I just described. But then on top of that, you get President Trump. Now, President Trump, in his first term, was more or less a traditional American president in terms of how he conducted foreign policy. And you want to remember, by the way, that Trump moves into the White House just as we're moving into the multipolar world that I described. And unsurprisingly, Trump abandons engagement with China and he adopts a policy of containment of China. And then when Joe Biden comes into the White House in 2021, he actually ramps up that containment policy. So you can see, starting with Trump 1 and then going to Biden, we are beginning to adjust our foreign policy to accommodate the structural changes that I just described. But that was Trump 1. Trump 2 does not equal Trump 1. Trump 2 is really something else. We've never seen anything like this before. And Trump has no shackles on him. He is free to pretty much operate however he wants. He figured out in his first term how he could run the White House without having to worry about people hemming him in, constraining him. To put it in slightly different terms, he broke out of the iron cage. And the thing about Trump, too, is we see that he is a unilateralist in ways we've never seen before. He has unmitigated contempt for international law, unmitigated contempt for international institutions and the rules that come with those institutions. And he has unmitigated contempt for allies, especially the Europeans. And he's free to act on those impulses. So this is really going to matter. And up until February 28th of this year, he was in many ways a one man wrecking crew that was doing significant damage to that Western/slash global order that had been created in the bipolar world and then spread worldwide in the unipolar moment. So he was doing more than the structural change called for. He was, again, a one man wrecking ball. And then on February 28th, he made a fatal mistake. And he started the war against Iran. And as you and I have talked about before, and I'm sure we'll talk about later on the show, this was a catastrophic decision, right? We, the United States, are going to lose this war in a very clear way. It's really going to be a devastating defeat for the United States and for Israel as well. And in this situation, Trump is flailing around. He's trying to figure out how he can get out of this disaster that he's in. And of course, in my opinion, there's no way he can get out of this disaster. It's going to end up very unhappily for him and for the United States, and I believe for the rest of the world, no matter what he does. So, what I'm saying to you, Glenn, is fundamental change is taking place for sure. A lot of it is structural, and a lot of it is due to Donald Trump and the fact that he is a unilateralist of the first order. And a lot of it has to do with what's happening in Iran, which is playing out before our very eyes. So that's a long-winded way of answering your very important question about what's taking place in the world today from a macro perspective.
Wow. Mearsheimer is just so brilliant. He just basically broke it down in less than 15 minutes. That was incredibly intelligent for what you just said. But he made 2 points here there. There are two things happening right now. The structural changes happening in the Western ways or global. It's happening. Like it's just gonna happen. The unipolar moment is coming to an end, and for the first time in history, America, a country as powerful as America, has decided to elect someone that is a unilateral. Women, someone that just does what they want to do. They don't have any grand strategy in their mind. They're just very focused on what they want. They like it's like a cult of personality. You can see when Trump has his board meetings with his administration. You see how they all refer to him as like he's a god, he's a king, he can do whatever he wants to do. This is exhausting. This is how they say Trump. And so Mearsheimer is just making this point that the structural changes is inevitable that is happening, and then Trump, unilateralist, is just wrecking this global world order. He's just wrecking it, and he's just going. And then, as he said on the 20th of February, he made a fatal mistake. Trump to this time has been someone that just goes in and go like he did in Venezuela, like he did against the Houthis. Like he just go in, limited, use the military in a very very limited way, and then he pulls out. And then he made the biggest of all big. Even previous presidents have avoided doing, which is going to war with Iran. Obama was asked by Benjamin Netanyahu to do it. He didn't do it. Biden was asked. He didn't do it. Bush was asked. He didn't do it. And then Trump, as I said, decided to go along with it. And what do we have for it? We have higher energy prices right now. Food stuff for me and you are going to get more expensive. And the world is just like now Iran has control of the Strait of Hormuz, something they didn't have before the war started. They allowed every ship to pass. The UAE has left OPEC. You can see realignment. China is supporting Iran. Russia is supporting Iran. You can see like this block has just changed, just because of the action of just one man. It's just making the whole world change.